Jake, you were talking out there about what he's meant to the program. Can you just sort of recap your first memories? I know you said you didn't watch him play live, obviously, but just what you think of him.
Yeah, well, you think of greatness, I think, and specifically on the court greatness. When you're a young hooper in Ohio growing up, that's a name that you've heard of, heard your parents or your grandparents talk about him. What I didn't realize until I got here and became a part of this program myself, that greatness was not just on the court. It extended well beyond the court and more into who he is as a person. And then I mentioned that was like the personal relationship that he and I have. We truly have a friendship, and he's someone who hits me after every game. That's not an exaggeration. And his thoughtfulness, it's things like that, in the seat that I'm in, that give that even extra. When I didn't think it's possible to have any more motivation to do what I'm doing on a daily basis, it's things like that just, it's icing on the cake. It takes it up to another level.
Where did that friendship start?
Yeah, well, I think, during that interim time, and then when I became the head coach and he would be around, and obviously, you guys who have followed us closely know how much I care about our former players, and I think the important role they play in building this program. So he's certainly, one that, dialogue began, and he would stop by from time to time. And when he was here, I'd obviously want to spend as much time with him as I could. But, even just those kind of few moments, there just felt a connection, and then through text messaging and phone calls and stuff, we built an even stronger bond, and just thankful for his support and encouragement.
He's obviously an intelligent person who's done a lot to use some of that to get back to the community. But what stands out to you about his personality, just talking to it outside of basketball?
I think he's so thoughtful, and just he's very kind. Certainly knows the game at a high level, and will sprinkle in some thoughts on our games. But every message, it's thoughtful and encouraging, and that's something that's just who he is, at least how I know him. And again, super thankful for that friendship.
Jake, what went through your head that first text message after a game? Like, where were you, and do you remember what it said?
I don't remember what it said, but I remember, like, our staff was kind of huddled up, and I was like, "You're not going to believe who texted me." It was like Jerry Lucas sent me a text message, and so that was pretty cool, and I kind of shared that with our staff.
Was that when you were head coach, interim coach?
I think it mostly happened when I was head coach. Yeah.
So
my memory is not as good as his, so I'll be the first to admit that.
What does that gesture mean to you? Like you said, good game, bad game, whatever. I don't hear from my parents after every article I write. What does that mean to hear something like that from him after every game?
Yeah, well, I've talked about this. Like, I care what our former players think about how we're playing. And our former players are invested when we play our best, and they stay invested when we play our worst. But I care about, like, playing with toughness, playing extremely hard. Certainly those things help you win. But I feel like we have a responsibility, because of how close our basketball family is. We have a responsibility to represent those guys who came before us, who helped build this building and helped us have the resources we have, and helped, create the standard that exists here. We owe it to them to play a certain way. So, when someone of that magnitude in that family reaches out, and that it means even more.
Did you give him your number? Did he get, how you guys?
I don't remember how that went about, but I'm sure if he asked me, he didn't have to put it in his phone. I just rattled it off, and he remembered. But I don't remember how exactly it came about.
Sunday, you have the opportunity to showcase your program, playing against a top opponent and everything. Just, I guess maybe first of all, just that platform and the ability to honor him again on Sunday, and then whatever thoughts you have about playing in the big ones.
Yeah, this is a big game for us. There's no denying that. You want to play in big games early, because you want to see where you're at. I think certainly we've tried to schedule aggressively. I've talked at length about the complications that come with that. We want to try to schedule high-level teams, at least one every year in the non-conference in our building. And this is one of those teams. So this is going to be a great, gauge of where we are come Sunday. It's certainly, I anticipate us going out there and playing well if we continue to play like we've practiced. But it's not, even if we play the best we've played, it doesn't define, right, who we are. It just literally tells us where we are come Sunday. It's very important, though, when you're, playing these high-level non-conference games, you got to put your best foot forward, and that's going to be important for us. So we've prepared well. Like I said, we got to have another good day tomorrow and prep leading into early afternoon on Sunday.
Devin, are you hopeful that he'll be able to play?
Yeah, certainly hopeful and prayerful, and all that. But he's making progress. It's too early for me to just kind of stamp it, one way or another. But he's progressing.
The opportunity to have a weekend home game, Jerry, honored too. I mean, do you expect a good crowd on Sunday? And are you excited for that?
Yeah, I mean, we need a good crowd. We need a good crowd, and I think Jerry deserves a good crowd, certainly, and our program deserves a good crowd, and we need to continue to try to build, a home court advantage. So I think, I'm anticipating Buckeye Nation supporting in a big way, and hopefully that's good enough for a few points, a few extra possessions, and so that's what you get with a big time home court environment. So excited to see what the shot looks and most importantly feels like come Sunday afternoon.
It's been a big week for you guys, games, Jerry, and also signing day. Can you tell us a little bit about the two guys that you signed?
Yeah, listen, signing day it's changed. I think as the college basketball landscape has changed, but that shouldn't minimize the impact of the two guys that, signed for us this week. The thing I love about them, they're both from Ohio. They both care about Ohio State. And, I think when you look back at the peaks of this program, the roster, certainly a significant portion of it is built around guys from the state. So not only do we have two guys coming in who are from the state, but we got two really good players, two players who fit how we want to play, multi-positional, skilled, high basketball IQ, good positional size. That's important, and then make no mistake, you got a young man in Alex Smith who bought into what we were building early, and that's important. Then you got a young man in Anthony Thompson who, really is doing something that hasn't been done in this program for a significant amount of time. A 5-star top 10 player to come into our program, and it's great for the future of Ohio State basketball. But elite level players, but just who they are, the character they have, and those families align with what we're about as a program. So that gets me, really excited.
Alex has been committed for a little while. Anthony just committed about a month ago or so. What was Anthony's recruitment like and winning recruiting battles, like you said? So the type of player Ohio State has not signed, man, really since Jared Sullivan.
Yeah, it was a good old-fashioned recruitment battle. I think the encouraging thing about Anthony was like the work, the relationship won out, and that's not always the case in recruiting, but when you're I believe one of the things that I was committed to when I became the head coach here was I was going to recruit as certainly best I could with a assistant coach work ethic, and so we collaborate at a high level as a staff. And certainly, Jamal Walker helped lead the way with his recruitment, but it was a total team effort. And I certainly, feel like as the head coach, you can get an advantage, if you are spending, the amount of time necessary to be a good recruiting staff. But the head coach has to lead that, and so we tried to do that, and I think we're ultimately, one of the things I pride myself on as a coach is the player-coach relationship, and that takes a lot of time. Well, I think that starts in the recruitment process. We don't want to wait till guys get on campus for them to have a relationship with the head coach. That's something that, we work on in the recruiting process, and we'll continue with those guys as they're signed. Like, I'm continuing to talk to those guys regularly to continue to build that relationship. I think it's really important.
Obviously, you can't dive into specific names, but guard position wasn't addressed by the end of this recruiting class. Are there any plans to pursue someone else, or maybe is that a portal option you look into? Kind of what's those?
Yeah, I think. Listen, there's value in flexibility in the spring. You don't want to go. I don't believe we can operate as a program with having to do a complete roster overhaul in the spring. We want to start with retention. We want to complement our retention with high-level freshmen, but I think you gotta have some roster flexibility in the spring. So there's so many different buckets that you can recruit from now in college basketball, and some we're still learning about, right? You have G League guys, you got international players who have played high-level, pro ball, certainly high school players, and then, the transfer portal. So we want to always maintain an element of flexibility in the spring. And, I think that's just kind of what our mentality is right now. The tricky thing about recruiting is you spend a lot of time, a lot of effort, and a lot of resources to ultimately, figure out no, right? Like, that's kind of the nature of recruiting, is sometimes you got to figure out. So we're not stopping recruiting and waiting until the spring. We're continuing to recruit, and we're continuing to recruit years in advance. But everything for us is about fit. It all comes down to fit, and when we find the guys who we think fit at a high level, we go after them with kind of all our attention and stuff in recruiting.
How did you see that with Alex so soon?
Yeah, the thing I like about Alex is it doesn't take a genius to see he can really shoot, right? Like that's easily identifiable. But the thing that I liked about him is I think he's got a high basketball IQ, and there's a toughness to him that aligns with how I think and what we're about as a program. So, and he's continued to get better, and that's an example of how hard he works and how good he wants to become. And I love that he cares about Ohio State. I mean, make no mistake, that's a big deal. And so when in an age when you're constantly almost have to recreate a family bond, recreate a love for a place every year, the more you can have some young men who have that built in, I think the better it is.
Victory bell, just the he's going to ring the victory bell.
Real quick, we're going to get Jerry and Jake here.
Yeah.
After, is that right? If we need any follow-up?
Yeah.